What happens when a president calls into a national news program not to talk about war, inflation, or scandals, but to gossip about the personal lives of TV hosts? That's exactly what unfolded when Donald Trump joined Fox Friends for what was supposed to be a serious conversation about foreign policy and America's economy. Instead, viewers got something entirely different: a bizarre mix of matchmaking, awkward laughter, and endless tangents that left even the hosts scrambling to change the subject. But underneath the awkward jokes and forced smiles, this call revealed something much deeper about Trump's focus, his priorities, and the way he uses distraction to dodge real issues. And the more you look at what he said, and what he avoided, the more troubling the picture becomes. When Trump dialed into Fox Friends, everyone expected fireworks. Maybe some tough talk about foreign leaders, maybe a bold claim about fixing inflation, or even a new line of attack against his political rivals. But instead of addressing global chaos or economic struggles, Trump took the conversation in a direction no one saw coming. He launched into a strange tangent about Sean Hannity and co-host Ainsley Earhart, openly speculating about their rumored relationship as if he were narrating a reality TV show. On live television, Trump said Hannity might take a very lovely young lady out to dinner, then made it clear he was talking about Earhart, who was sitting right there, caught between forced smiles and visible discomfort. The hosts tried to keep things professional, but Trump kept circling back, repeating himself again and again like this was the biggest news story of the day. Instead of discussing global security or America's economic problems, the President of the United States was busy gossiping about Fox News personalities holding hands in Washington. Even when the panel tried to move the conversation forward, Trump insisted on returning to the topic, saying things like, "I don't want them to get mugged," and even joking about who earns more money in the relationship. For millions watching, it felt surreal. This wasn't leadership. It was awkward matchmaking on national TV. But as bizarre as it seemed, this moment wasn't just random comedy. It revealed something deeper about Trump's style. When confronted with tough questions or global crises, his instinct is to distract, to turn the spotlight elsewhere, and to control the narrative with spectacle. And that's exactly what was happening here. Because while Trump was busy embarrassing the hosts, something much bigger was unfolding overseas. And it demanded answers. While Trump was joking about Fox News romances, European leaders were rushing back from their vacations to deal with a crisis. The war in Ukraine had escalated, and every ally was on edge. The world wanted clarity. Where did Trump stand? And what would America do if tensions got worse? Instead, what they got was contradiction. One moment, Trump insisted he wanted a ceasefire immediately. The next, he argued that ceasefires weren't even necessary, boasting that during his time in office he never settled conflicts with them. Then, in almost the same breath, he said a ceasefire was coming very soon. It was a whiplash performance, 3 different positions in a matter of minutes, all from the same man. For those listening closely, it wasn't just confusing, it was alarming. Allies abroad and citizens at home were watching a former president dance around one of the most pressing foreign policy issues of our time while treating it like just another talking point. His words didn't show a clear plan, only inconsistency, the kind that fuels uncertainty, not stability. And yet, through all this, he seemed far more energized talking about Fox News hosts than about the human cost of war. Missiles were striking cities, thousands of lives were being lost, and Trump's televised priority was whether Sean Hannity and Ainsley Earhart could safely walk down a street together. But the troubling part doesn't end there, because while he was muddying the waters on ceasefires, Trump also revealed something even more concerning about who he listens to when shaping his views on elections and democracy. As the call dragged on, Trump revealed something that sent a chill through anyone paying attention. He admitted that he had been getting advice on elections from none other than a brutal dictator who has clung to power for more than 16 years. Instead of condemning authoritarian practices, Trump spoke about them with a strange sense of admiration, echoing their justifications for postponing elections during times of conflict. When pressed on the idea of democracy in wartime, this dictator explained that during the war you can't have elections, suggesting that safety, security, and even truth on the battlefield should come before the ballot box. Trump didn't reject that reasoning, he repeated it. And in doing so, he raised the question, what happens if America itself faces conflict during an election year? The suggestion might have slipped past casual viewers, but the implications are massive. A leader casually floating the idea that wars can delay democracy is more than just careless, it's dangerous. It's the kind of rhetoric that undermines one of the very foundations of American governance. And the fact that Trump framed it almost casually, sandwiched between jokes and tangents, made it even more unsettling. Because if you look closely, a pattern emerges. Whenever Trump is faced with serious issues, he either distracts with gossip or borrows talking points from the world's most authoritarian leaders. It's not just about what he says. It's about what he chooses to ignore. And nowhere is that clearer than in the way he talks about women, power, and what he thinks being a star allows him to get away with. Just when it seemed the call couldn't get more off the rails, Trump wandered into territory that reminded everyone of his most infamous scandals. He began revisiting those notorious comments about women, the ones that shocked the world when they first surfaced, the ones where he bragged that being a star allowed him to do anything. Instead of showing regret or taking responsibility, Trump brushed it off, insisting that what he said was historically true. Think about that for a moment. A man who once held the highest office in the country was doubling down on remarks that most Americans, regardless of party, found indefensible. He wasn't simply defending himself. He was normalizing behavior that would destroy the career of almost any other public figure. And then, when asked directly if he considered himself a star, he answered without hesitation, "I think you can say that, yeah." The irony is impossible to ignore. At the very same time Trump was claiming to stand for family values, he was on national television defending words and attitudes that undermined those very principles. The disconnect couldn't be clearer. And here's the real kicker. Imagine, even for a second, if President Obama had said anything remotely close to this. Imagine if he had joked about news anchors' love lives while foreign leaders scrambled to prevent war, or if he had repeated lines from authoritarian strongmen to justify delaying elections. The outrage would have been instantaneous, deafening, and relentless. But when it's Trump? His allies look the other way, shrugging it off as just another Trump moment. This isn't just a one-off slip. It's part of a long, troubling pattern where controversy, scandal, and distraction aren't accidents. They're strategies. And while the world gets caught up in the spectacle, the real damage often goes unnoticed. Nowhere is that clearer than in the way Trump talks about America's economy, where his claims and reality couldn't be further apart. If Trump's comments about dictators and celebrities weren't troubling enough, his take on the economy was just as reckless. He painted a picture of America that sounded more like fantasy than fact, claiming inflation was basically a perfect number, and insisting that tariffs were bringing in trillions of dollars from foreign countries. According to Trump, this was proof that America was winning economically under his leadership. But the numbers told a completely different story. Even Fox's own business reporters couldn't keep up the act. Moments after Trump's claims, they were forced to admit live on air that inflation was actually rising. Producer prices were up, markets were sliding, and year-over-year numbers were far worse than expected. The disconnect between Trump's rosy description and the actual data was impossible to ignore. And this wasn't just spin, it was deliberate. By bragging about trillions in tariff money, Trump glossed over the reality that tariffs are essentially taxes paid by American businesses and consumers, not foreign governments. Prices go up at home, families feel the squeeze, and yet Trump frames it as a victory. It's economic sleight of hand, shifting blame, twisting numbers, and hoping the public won't notice. For viewers, it raised a critical question. If Trump can stand on national television and declare the economy beautiful, while real-time data shows markets tanking, how much else of what he says is built on the same kind of illusion? And if distractions like gossip and bravado dominate the conversation, how much longer can the real issues be ignored?
Because while inflation and tariffs are debated on air, another elephant still looms in the background, one that both Trump and his allies seem desperate to keep out of the headlines. For all the strange detours Trump took during that Fox Friends call, there was one subject he carefully tiptoed around: Jeffrey Epstein. The disgraced financier's case had exploded back into headlines, with new documents and connections emerging almost daily. Yet Trump, who once partied in the same circles and whose past comments about Epstein were already under scrutiny, said almost nothing. Instead, he danced around the topic, offering vague remarks that sounded more like rehearsed deflections than honest answers. It was as if he knew that even mentioning Epstein by name risked reopening a door he wanted firmly shut. The silence wasn't just noticeable, it was deafening. Viewers picked up on it too. Social media lit up with questions. Why would Trump spend 5 minutes joking about Fox anchors' love lives, but offer almost nothing about one of the most explosive scandals in the country? The avoidance raised eyebrows, fueling speculation about what Trump didn't want to say and why. This silence fit a familiar pattern: flood the airwaves with noise, distractions, and outrageous sound bites so that the real controversies fade into the background. And while Fox might have let it slide in the moment, the public didn't. But Epstein wasn't the only topic where Trump seemed to dodge and deflect. There was another issue he couldn't escape, one that reached far beyond gossip or economics: his own sinking popularity. Behind the jokes, the gossip, and the endless tangents, the numbers told a different story, and they were brutal. Poll after poll showed Trump's approval rating sinking to historic lows. Even loyal supporters were beginning to waver, frustrated by the chaos, the scandals, and the lack of focus on real issues. What made it worse was the timing. While Trump was busy cozying up to authoritarians and dodging tough questions, everyday Americans were watching their trust in government erode. The economy looked shaky, healthcare remained a crisis, and yet their president seemed more concerned with defending himself on morning TV than addressing the problems people were actually living with. The collapse wasn't just about disapproval, it was about credibility. Once the cracks began to show, every outburst, every distraction, and every evasive answer only deepened the perception that Trump was out of touch. Analysts compared his numbers to previous presidents and found something chilling. Trump's popularity had plummeted faster than nearly any modern leader in his second term. And the more he tried to spin the narrative, blaming the media, pointing at enemies, or shifting focus to minor feuds, the worse it got. Because while distractions might work for a day or a week, the numbers don't lie. And the truth was, the American people were turning away in record numbers. But if Trump's approval ratings were collapsing at home, there was still the bigger picture: his standing on the global stage, and how foreign leaders were quietly seizing on his weakness. Donald Trump's marathon Fox Friends call wasn't just another media stunt, it was a snapshot of a presidency unraveling in real time. In less than an hour, we saw a leader who could ramble endlessly about gossip, but go silent on scandals that mattered. We saw a man clinging to old distractions, while his approval ratings crumbled and allies abroad began to question his strength.
For supporters, it was a reminder of why they loved him: unpredictable, unfiltered, unapologetic. But for critics, it was proof that the chaos was no longer strategy. It was simply who he had become. And maybe that's the most telling part of all. When history looks back, it won't just measure Trump by the policies he passed or the battles he fought. It will measure him by these moments: the calls, the rants, the endless need to dominate the spotlight, no matter the cost. Because in the end, this wasn't just about one interview. It was about a president who couldn't stop talking long enough to listen, and who may have revealed more in what he didn't say than in all the words he did.